Operation Midnight Hammer. Picture 125 U.S. military aircraft, a thunderous swarm descending on Iran's nuclear sites. Natanz, Isfahan. It's June 21, 2025, 2 a.m. 7. B-2 Spirit bombers streak across the Mediterranean over Israel and Iraq, breaching Iranian airspace to unleash devastation. The world holds its breath. How will Iran retaliate? With over 24 U.S. bases in the region, the threat is real. 2 days later, Iran strikes back, hitting Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and Al Asad in Iraq. This isn't new. Iran has a history of striking U.S. bases and crippling American assets. Today we examine 4 moments when Iran inflicted real damage on the U.S., critical events that define the volatile U.S.-Iran relationship. To understand the present and what comes next, we must look back. The story begins after a U.S. drone strike kills Major General Qasem Soleimani, Iran's Quds Force commander, near Baghdad. Iran's response is swift. On January 8, 2020, the IRGC launches Operation Martyr Soleimani, a direct open missile attack on U.S. forces. More than a dozen ballistic missiles rain down on Al Asad Air Base in Iraq. American troops scramble for cover, huddling in bunkers as warheads slam into the base. Hangars, maintenance bays, and living quarters are obliterated. The night sky turns to fire. The attack is precise, targeting areas packed with U.S. personnel and aircraft. When dawn breaks, the devastation is clear. Craters, rubble, and smoldering wreckage. Miraculously, no one is killed, thanks to early warnings and hardened shelters. But over 100 U.S. service members suffer traumatic brain injuries from the blasts. Iran demonstrates it can launch large, accurate missile strikes against hardened U.S. targets. The attack is calibrated, a show of strength but carefully avoiding U.S. fatalities to prevent all-out war. It's the largest ballistic missile attack ever on U.S. forces. Iran proves its missile program is a real threat and that it's willing to risk escalation. For Iran, it's a message of resolve and deterrence. For the U.S., it's a wake-up call. Even well-defended bases are vulnerable. The incident forces both sides to reconsider the risks of miscalculation. The smoldering craters at Al-Assad are a stark reminder. The U.S.-Iran standoff is always one step from catastrophe. This was not just a warning, it was a demonstration of capability. Iran called America's bluff, and the world took notice. The psychological impact on U.S. troops was lasting. The attack redefined the rules of engagement in the region. It showed that Iran could strike hard, fast, and with precision. The world saw a new level of risk in the U.S.-Iran conflict. The balance of power in the Middle East had shifted. The shadow war was now out in the open. 6 months before Al-Assad, another confrontation unfolded, this time in the skies over the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. RQ-4 Global Hawk, a high-altitude surveillance drone, was shot down by Iran. The Pentagon said the drone was in international airspace. Iran claimed it violated their territory. The IRGC used a domestically built third-of-Khordad missile system to destroy the $130 million drone. The shootdown was a direct challenge to U.S. technological dominance. Tensions soared. President Trump called it a very big mistake. U.S. retaliatory strikes were prepared. Planes in the air then called off at the last minute. Trump cited concerns over potential casualties, choosing restraint. For Iran, it was a propaganda victory. They had downed a prized U.S. asset and faced down retaliation. Iran released footage insisting the drone had crossed into their airspace. The incident exposed deep mistrust. Each side saw a different reality. Iran's use of its own missile system showcased its growing military capability. Years of sanctions hadn't stopped Iran from developing effective weapons. The world saw Iran's willingness to act, and the U.S.'s willingness to pull back from the brink. The shootdown was a calculated risk that paid off for Iran. It forced the U.S. into a difficult position without triggering war. The event reset the rules of engagement in the Gulf. It was a masterclass in brinkmanship. The skies over the Persian Gulf would never be the same. The message Iran could blind America's eye in the sky. The standoff had entered a new phase. The world watched, wondering what line would be crossed next. To understand the next incidents, we go back to the 1980s and the Iran-Iraq tanker war. The Persian Gulf became a battleground, with both sides attacking oil tankers to cripple each other's economies. The U.S. launched Operation Earnest Will to protect Kuwaiti tankers, reflagging them and providing naval escorts. On October 16, 1987, the reflagged MV Sea Isle City was anchored in Kuwaiti waters, waiting for a convoy. Under cover of darkness, Iran fired a Silkworm missile from the Al-Fal Peninsula. The missile slammed into the ship's bridge, injuring the American captain and 17 crew members. The attack was a direct challenge to U.S. protection in the Gulf. The U.S. responded with Operation Nimble Archer, destroying 2 Iranian oil platforms used for military operations. U.S. destroyers bombarded the platforms, then Navy SEALs finished the job with demolition charges. The message attacks on U.S.-flagged vessels would be met with force. The strike marked a major escalation in the undeclared naval war. Iran showed it was willing to confront a superpower. The U.S. demonstrated it would retaliate decisively. The Gulf was now a flashpoint for direct U.S.-Iran conflict. The risks of intervention were clear. The tanker war had become America's war too. The Sea Isle City attack and U.S. response set a dangerous precedent. The waters of the Gulf grew even more perilous. The world saw how quickly escalation could spiral. The stage was set for even greater clashes. 6 months after Sea Isle City, the conflict in the Gulf exploded into the largest U.S. naval battle since World War II. The USS Samuel B. Roberts, on patrol for Operation Earnest Will, struck an Iranian mine on April 14, 1988. The blast tore a 21-foot hole in the hull, flooding the engine room and nearly sinking the ship. The crew fought fires and flooding for hours, saving the ship against all odds. 10 sailors were seriously injured, but none killed. U.S. divers recovered mines with serial numbers matching those seized from an Iranian mine layer. The evidence was clear. Iran was responsible. The U.S. launched Operation Praying Mantis, its largest naval action since World War II. U.S. forces destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms used for military operations. Iran responded, sending warships and jets to challenge the U.S. fleet. The Iranian Joshan fired a missile at the USS Wainwright. U.S. ships sank it in response. U.S. jets and ships engaged Iranian frigates Sahand and Sabalan, sinking one and crippling the other. By day's end, Iran's navy was battered, 2 warships sunk, another crippled, and 2 oil platforms destroyed. Operation Praying Mantis was a decisive U.S. victory, reasserting American dominance in the Gulf. The clash ended major naval battles in the tanker war. The U.S. sent a clear message: attacks on its ships would be met with overwhelming force. The incident left a deep scar on U.S.-Iran relations. The Gulf was now a theater of open warfare. The memory of the Samuel B. Roberts would haunt both sides. Iran learned the cost of direct confrontation. The U.S. learned the risks of entanglement. The shadow war at sea had become very real. The world saw the dangers of escalation. The tanker war's legacy endures. The scars remain. From the minefields of the 1980s to today's missile strikes, a pattern is clear. The downing of the Global Hawk, the Al Asad barrage, the Sea Isle City and Samuel B. Roberts attacks, these are not isolated incidents. Each is a chapter in a long saga of defiance. Iran's message: we will retaliate when threatened. These flashpoints show that any major U.S. strike on Iran will almost certainly provoke a forceful response. History proves Iran won't back down, no matter the odds. What do you think? Share your thoughts below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.
Want more stories that echo across the world? Subscribe to Global Echo and never miss the truth.